Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Franchise Hockey Manager 9 playthrough of the Chicago Blackhawks. We are in the early stages of the 2028 to 2029 season, and the Blackhawks are off to an excellent start, 14-5-2 record. We were considered one of the Stanley Cup favorites as the season began after making a couple of big free agent acquisitions last offseason. And thus far, things have gone really well on the ice. You can see we're tied for third in the Western Conference with the Coyotes with 30 points. But we have several games in hand on all of the teams that we're competing with for the playoffs right now. When you dig into the expanded standings, things look even better for us here in Chicago. We've allowed the fewest goals in all of hockey, just 56. And our plus 22 goal differential is the second best in hockey behind just the Panthers. So the hope is to keep the productivity going here in the month of December. You can see a pretty reasonable schedule for us. A lot of home games beginning tonight against the Rangers, who are also a very good team this year. Have had a few injuries off and on this year, but nothing that has been crippling, literally or figuratively. One key injury that we are dealing with right now is our big-time center, Captain Mitch Marner, out for about 1 to 2 months. He's been banged up for about the last week now, dealing with a herniated disc in his back. Given that we've been playing so well and that we are pretty strong at center right now, Quinton Byfield and Matty Beniers were the two guys that we added in free agency that I mentioned earlier. We've also got Dylan Larkin, who has been very productive and healthy thus far this year, as well as Cole Sillinger and Nathan Villeneuve. So we have a ton of talent at center, and even at right wing, where Marner typically plays, we're a little weaker there. But the thought is that a player like Villeneuve, who can play on the right wing, may get a little more playing time there while we are without our captain. And it's been a decent start to the month of December for the Blackhawks. We won only one of 3 home games, but we did just bounce back with back-to-back wins on the road against Colorado and Winnipeg. So 3 out of 5 wins to start the month. Hopefully with 3 home games in a row this upcoming week, we can get on a little bit of a roll here after the good brief road trip out to Colorado and Winnipeg. Did suffer a minor injury to a player who I know some of you don't even think should be on the team, and I can't argue with you that much. Adrian Kemp, who we picked up in a trade last year when we were trying to remain somewhat competitive through a lot of injuries, and we also needed to get over the salary floor at points last season. Day-to-day now with a lacerated shin, going to be out for about 5 days. Kemp making a lot of money, over $7 million as far as his cap hit this year and the last year of his contract, and has not been particularly productive with 12 points and including only 1 goal in 24 games this year. Not getting a ton of ice time either. Was hoping that he would get a little more activity with the injury to Marner, which he has. I believe when Marner went down, he may have had like no goals and 2 assists. So he has definitely been more productive over the last several weeks with Marner out of the lineup, getting a little more ice time. Not a major injury, and still somebody that we could potentially move on from before the trade deadline in a few months. He is game available. Odds are we probably won't play him too much unless we have a lot of fitness issues with the team. Luke Coughlin, the left defenseman, also banged up day-to-day with groin tightness. Hopefully he will be back and healthy soon. Typically we've kind of been rotating between Coughlin, Rotundi, and David Jaracek as our 5th and 6th defenders. Typically when everyone is healthy, 2 of those 3 will be playing, and Quinn Hughes, Kevin Korchinski, Rasmus Anderson, and Sam Rinzel are pretty much in the starting lineup very consistently, unless they happen to be banged up in need of blow. And some good news yesterday for the Blackhawks as Christmas approaches here in 2028. Captain Mitch Marner ready to resume skating, so it seems like he is bouncing back from that herniated disc in a reasonably expeditious manner. Looks like he's going to be out for another 1 to 2 weeks. It's been a solid month for the Blackhawks, but a little different than the start to the season. 22-10-2. Still having a really nice year. Obviously, the torrid pace that we had started with has cooled down a little bit, but it's been kind of an interesting month in that we haven't been as dominant as at home. I don't know if we were undefeated at home during the first 2 months of the season, but if we had losses, it was very few of them. You can see we've now lost 3 games at home this month. But on our road trips, we've been pretty good, especially because they've all been back-to-back road trips. We took both against Colorado and Winnipeg, as we talked about. We lost both in Vegas and the Kings, but then came back and just beat Toronto and the Islanders on a road trip to the East Coast. So a 4-2 record on the road with all of those games being back-to-back is pretty solid result. 3 games left in the month against Nashville, Vegas, and then on the road in Calgary before the calendar will flip to 2029. Thinking that, we should not be too far from having Marner back. Would be great if we get him back on that homestand to begin the month of January. More realistically, it might not be till that road trip that we get him back, but certainly will bolster our lineup. Taking a look at the standings, still in real good shape despite slowing down a bit. 46 points, which is second best in the Western Conference. Larkin, having a resurgent season since he's been healthy, leads the league in goals. Newcomer Byfield with 27 assists. And our goaltending remains excellent with backup goaltender Svedabak second in goals against, and starting goaltender Wallstedt fifth in the league in goals against. Clearly, as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, have the best goaltending in the league through the beginning of December, and certainly with those two being among the top 5 in goals against, my assumption is that we are still the best defensive team in the league. And after I was just talking about how great our team defense and our goaltending has been, give up 5 goals to Nashville, but still a victory 9-5. Dolly Parton would like it for the Blackhawks here as we get near the end of the month. Larkin continued to just have an incredible season, 5 goals and 2 assists in a monster performance. We've talked a lot about him. His first 2 years with the Blackhawks, 45 and 53 goals, incredibly valuable player. The last 3 seasons, he's been very productive. It's just he hasn't been on the ice very much. This year, though, he has played in 31 of our 35 games. If his fitness starts dropping into the low 80s, we're going back-to-back nights. We typically are sitting him out, hoping that will, on some level, give him a slightly better chance of remaining healthy. But with 31 goals through 31 games so far, Mr. Larkin is having what could be a historic season, plus 31 on the season also in 31 games. So Larkin likely making a pretty strong case to be the league MVP with his performance thus far. And we finished up the year yesterday with a loss at Calgary, but wasn't a bad finish to the month since we did get the win against Nashville that we talked about, as well as a win against Vegas. So all in all, we're standing 24-11-2 with 50 points, and the calendar has not yet turned to 2029. So I think we're in a pretty good spot with this team. Still the second most points in the Western Conference, behind only our division rivals, the Wild. And that also is good for the second most points in all of hockey. Larkin continues to lead the league in goals, although he hasn't scored in the last 2 games, and is tied for second in the league in points. Backup goalie Svedabak continues to perform exceptionally on the 3 or 4 games a month that he's playing for us. And even on the injured list, the captain remains popular. Byfield, the newcomer, also a popular jersey for the Blackhawks, although in terms of the NHL at large, only the captain is in the top 20. Looking at the development report, a lot of the young players continued to improve in December. Dubé, Eklund, Jaracek, Korchinski, Rotundi, and the aforementioned Svetibak all getting better. Along with a lot of our prospects. You can see some of the aging players continuing to move in the wrong direction. Interestingly, I think between Anderson, Kemp, Larkin, and Sharangovich, I believe all of those guys are in the final year of their contract with us. Anderson is... Sharangovich still has 2 years. Larkin is in his final year. And then I think Kemp was the other one. But I think we've done a decent job of not putting together a lot of contracts that take players well into their mid-30s. Clearly, with the way Larkin is playing, he could be in position for a huge contract this offseason. That's going to be an interesting decision for us. The other thing that I continue to think about is what to do with Kemp. He's pretty important right now. And you can see he has definitely picked up the offense in his production since Marner went out. So that is a decent sign that when he's not playing on the fourth line, he can still be a somewhat productive NHL player. But there is a thought to me, given that we are going for it all this year, that at some point do we trade Klemp to... clear up around $7 million and then potentially upgrade by, picking up someone on the trading block. Right now, there are not, it looks like, I'm searching it by position, it looks like. Doesn't look like there's anyone revolutionary. Our former player, Luke Kunin, who I believe we traded away a few years ago, or we let him go as a free agent. I can't remember exactly. No, we did trade him away to the Capitals when we were trying to clear a little salary space. But Kunin and Kemp are actually 2 of the top guys that are available on the trade block right now. That's something that could certainly change in the coming weeks. If he wasn't banged up, Anthony Beauvillier would be a potentially interesting guy to bring on board, but out with a torn triceps for 2 to 3 months, so that's probably not a direction to go. There's part of me that thinks we could do a trade like this where we get rid of Kemp, get kind of anything back in return, get the salary off our books, and then bring on a highly paid player who's better and younger than Kemp. Now, we will have to give up some young assets to pull off a trade like that, but given that, as I said, we are going for it, there is part of me that thinks that could be in the works over the next couple months. Not shockingly, Dylan Larkin, Player of the Month, after pushing himself into the NHL lead in goals, and you can see he's on pace for a 68-goal season and over 100 points. As we've talked about, the big thing with him is just staying healthy. Would love to see a completely healthy campaign from him, because as I mentioned earlier, when he has played a full season for us, he has never been anything less than a excellent and dynamic goal scoring force. And checking in on team attendance, 19 sellouts for the Blackhawks, continue to lead the league in attendance. You may remember from our previous episode that we cut down game promotions and arena operations completely just to save those last 2 revenue points. Doesn't seem to have any impact on our attendance. We've got a huge market, very loyal fans, and we are also having an excellent season on the ice. So attendance remains great here as we begin 2029. Team harmony, very good, no issues. And thinking about job security, ownership is pleased with us, and we've made a lot of progress this season in terms of fan happiness also. I think we were about half that level. Yeah, 36 at the end of last year, a little bit of new season optimism, and then those 2 free agent signings got us to a respectable level in the high 50s. And this strong season on the ice has the fans pleased with the direction of this franchise, which is nice to see. And our schedule for January does line up a little more difficult simply because we've got 2 really long road trips, 3 in a row next week, and then a 5-game road trip kind of in the middle to late part of the month. So with those 8 games on the road, we've got 7 at home, so it's not a huge disparity, but just 2 long road trips during the month, and between January 9th, actually between January 7th and January 25th, we're only going to play home at once on a Sunday against Dallas. So I think the goal for the month is to have a winning record. You know, if we can go 8-7 with 8 of our games being on the road, including, you know, almost, you know, or exactly. Well, there's not an exactly because there's 7 days in a week, but 2.5 week stretch where we have only 1 home game. I would say that if we can go 8-7 and have 32 wins when we're coming out of the month of January, if that happens, and if Mitch Marner is back and healthy, and we haven't had any other real material injuries, I would view January as pretty successful. And the Blackhawks haven't played really well this first week plus of January. Won 6-0 against Edmonton to start off the new year, but have since lost at home to Buffalo and Vegas. Have a game at Montreal today. The good news, though, is that our captain is back. Only 80%, so probably won't play him in this game today. But Marner is back, potentially in the lineup, starting with our next game. You can see that puts us pretty close to the salary cap for the NHL, which is fine. We like the team coming into this year. We knew we were right up against the cap with what we had brought on board. Again, we still have the optionality of potentially moving on from Kemp over the next couple of months before we get to the trade deadline. But we are healthy, so the goal is to go on a bit of a roll here in this long road trip that we had ahead of us. We talked about it. We've got, at this point, 8 of our next 9 games are going to be on the road. And, you know, if we can get through that stretch with a winning record, that would be quite an achievement. And we've played about another week of action. Did okay at the start of the road trip. Lost to Montreal, but then won against Tampa and Carolina back-to-back games. But went back home and lost on the one home game that we're going to have. So 2-2 so far. And now we got 5 games in a row on the road. Don't know that we're going to be in a position to get 3 wins in those 5 road games in a row. But that would certainly help us in our goal to get to 32 wins by the end of the month. With the less impressive performance here in January, we've definitely fallen back from the Wild. They now have a 9-game lead on us in the division, and we're tied for second in the division now with the Stars after they beat us, and they've got a game in hand on us. Still tied for the second most points in the Western Conference, but we're definitely not playing as well as we did the first couple of months of the season. You can see Larkin is now tied for the league lead in goals. He's only scored 1 goal since that monster game about 3 or 4 weeks ago. But going to be a tough stretch here. 6 road games in a row. But we'll see how we do. Get through those, and then I think we'll be approaching the we'll be at the All-Star break after we get through those games. So 5 on the road and then 3 at home, and then the All-Star break. So the goal is to hopefully steal some games on the road ice and get back home and close out the month of January strong before we get some time off. And that long road stretch is finally over. We ended up on the last 5 games. We only won 2 of them. But we ended up winning 4 out of the 8 games on the road in our goal to win 5 of 9. The issue is that we lost 2-0 at home to the Stars. So it's been a bit of a weaker January for us. Would certainly love to get some momentum as we head into the All-Star break. If we can win 3 in a row against Tampa Bay, the Devils, and Colorado, that'll get us to the 32 wins that we were kind of hoping to get out of this month with. But we're going to have to do it the hard way with 3 straight wins. You can see that we're still tied with Dallas in the standings now, but they've got a game in hand, and we've got the same number of wins, so they're in a better position than we are. Larkin barely holding on to the league lead in goals with 33 at this point. Svetibak continues to have an excellent season. We've actually started playing him a little bit more often. He's still technically the backup goaltender, but he's been so good that there are times when both of them are at 100%, where we're giving Svetibak an extra day here and there in front of the net because he has been better than Wallstedt this year. Not that Wallstedt's been bad, but Svetibak has been one of the best goalies in the league. So trying to give him a little more playing time. The team is healthy. Hopefully we can win some of these games at the end of January and get into the All-Star break feeling good about the team. And most importantly, have good health as we kind of try to get ready for the last 30 games of the year. And that last homestand before the All-Star break was not good. We beat Tampa 6-3 with Svetibak, the de facto backup, in goal. Then Wallstedt came on and lost 7-5, and I felt like we were in a position where could have a potential shift in our goaltenders. Went back to Svetibak though in the last game and did lose 3-0. So as we get ready for the All-Star break, I don't know if we really know who our number 1 goalie is. Maybe it's a problem, but I feel like we've got 2 really good goalies, so maybe it's not either. Certainly when we get to the playoffs, we'd like to kind of have confidence that we're putting the right person out there every game. And at this point, I don't know who that guy is, so that's not great. We do have another 30 games until the All-Star break. Larkin reinvigorating his scoring touch the last couple games, even though we have been losing up to 36 goals, which leads the league. Will be interesting to see what kind of respect the Blackhawks get when it comes to the All-Star game this year. You can see that we've now slipped to being tied for 3rd with the Stars for the most points in the Western Conference. Taking a look at the more expanded standings, our goal differential of 28 has kind of slipped back. We were best in the conference at the start of this episode, at the start of December, and now we are 4th in the Western Conference in terms of goal differential, and we are 6th in all of hockey. 150 goals allowed is also no longer the best in the sport, not by any margin. There's a lot of teams that are better than us now. So although goaltending has been our strength, it's definitely been weaker more recently. We've talked a ton about Svetibak's great season. You can see he's played 19 games now, 240 goals against, 923 save percentage, and an 11-6 record. Wallstedt has still definitely played more, but his 285 goals against and 906 save percentage are both well back of where Svetibak is. Does have 3 shutouts and a 19-14-2 record. But as I talked about, have been given Svetibak some more time in recent weeks, and I don't really know what the answer is for when we get back from the All-Star break, but fortunately we'll have some time to contemplate that. Taking a look at the development report for the month of January, little less impressive at the NHL level. Forget, Nazar, and Villeneuve all got better, but the rest of our development was really centered on guys in the minors or guys who we have rights for. And the aging guys, Marner and Sharangovich, continue to lose a little bit in terms of their physical skills in the case of Marner and offensive ability in the case of Sharangovich. Rosters announced for the All-Star game. Let's see what we have in terms of Blackhawks. Ooh, and this is something that hopefully will fuel the Blackhawks. We are having a better season than we've had in several years, although we've struggled a little bit recently. But one of the top teams in the Western Conference, we have the leading goal scorer in all of hockey, and not a single Chicago Blackhawk is named an All-Star. So that should not sit well in this locker room. I don't know how a guy like Larkin with 36 goals, 20 assists, 56 points in 46 games, and he's plus 31 on the season. There must be some players having some incredible seasons for a guy like Dylan Larkin not to be on the All-Star team. Taking a look quickly at some of the other guys on the team. Quentin Byfield has kind of slowed down a little bit, still leads the team with 33 assists and has 46 points. Victor Eklund, good year. Kemp has really kind of started to come on offensively with Marner back. Now it'll be interesting to see if he kind of slips back, but it's been good to have him on board. Matty Beniers, I think the issue there is that he's a more dynamic offensive player than you'd normally find on a third line, and as a third line player, maybe not surrounded by the talent that he's used to, and maybe not also getting as much ice time as he's used to. But 21 points in 42 games has to be considered a little bit disappointing on that front. Most of the players with a good season were having pretty strong plus minuses. The exceptions are some of the younger players. Jordan Forget, the rookie who's -9, worst on the team. Cole Sillinger, -3. And Nathan Villeneuve, who I think is in a similar situation to Matty Beniers. With all the injuries we had at center last year, there were a lot of times where Villeneuve was a first or second line center for us. This year, he's kind of been a fourth line center most often when we've been playing him. And we've actually started giving a little more playing time to Sillinger on the fourth line just because I think he's a little more stout physically and defensively than Villeneuve is. But just a really rough year for him, a year after scoring 27 goals and being plus 12 on the year. He's got 5 goals in 44 games, and he's -7. So we've definitely got a lot to think about with this team, but hopefully the insults of having by far the leading goal scorer in the league and still not having any All-Stars will fuel this team to come back after the All-Star break and play better than we have been recently. And ownership is satisfied with us despite the fact that we've slipped back over the last couple of months. We're a serious contender, wants us to look for players to help us. Fans are satisfied with what we've been doing. Replacing us is out of the question. So all of those things are positive. But to be honest, we were 14-5-2 when we started this episode. So a little bit of simple subtraction tells us that we're 16-15 in the months of December and January, which isn't going to get it done. Going to have to be playing better than that down the stretch in the last 30 games of the season. Hopefully a little bit of rest for this, for the veterans in particular, will do us some good over the next week or so. We don't have our next game until the 10th at home against Winnipeg. So we'll find out what happens in the month of February and what we decide to do as we get closer to the trade deadline in our next episode. Then I'm going to have the whole month of March, and hopefully finish off that episode with hopefully some games in April that don't really mean all that much. We're actually have slipped back to a situation where, despite the really good season that we're having, we're only up 7 points on being out of the playoffs. And at this point, we're as close to being out of the playoffs as we are to the Wild, who continue to have the best record in all of hockey. So we've got some work to do over the last 30 games of the season. I think with everyone being healthy, hopefully we can get the job done, get into the playoffs, and hopefully have home ice advantage for at least one series, if not more, when all is said and done. And we will find out how well we are able to do in terms of achieving those goals in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.